Good morning, a good Erev Shabbos. Today, today we are doing Perek of Bikkurim. Today's shiur is sponsored Lila Nishmas, Aaron Nachman Simcha Cohen, Yeshua Mordechai ben Shepsel, Bracha Sarah B'Shmuel Leib, Moshe ben Yosef. May the Neshamas have an Aliyah. Amen. Today's shiur, we're now starting the second week of Chodesh Kislev. Because Rosh Chodesh was last Friday, so today is the second week of Chodesh Kislev. The second week of Chodesh Kislev was sponsored by the Blackbird Recruiting Group. Thank you for your sponsorship, and may it be a schus for everyone in your company. And it's also the series dedicated as a schus for Avigdor. What's the name? Avigdor Aaron Ben Gittel Masha. This will be a schus for him and his entire mishpacha. Amen. Okay, here we go. Perek Beis, Mishnah Aleph. Okay, the first part of this chapter compares Teruma, Bikkurim, and Maaser Sheni with one another. But the laws that apply to both, but and some that don't apply to any. Okay, Mishnah Aleph. Hatruma Bikkurim. Truma and Bikkurim have the following common halachas. Chayavim aleihem misa. Non-Kohanim are Chiyav Misa B'dei Shemayim for eating them intentionally. The Chomesh, and non-Kohanim who eat them by mistake, who eat Truma and Bikkurim by mistake, they have to pay. They have to pay the value of what they ate to the Kohen plus a Chomesh, which is a quarter of the value, which is a total of a fifth. So let's see, if you ate $100 worth of truma, they're really paying back 125, which is an additional quarter, which out of the whole thing is an added fifth. The Asurim Lazarim and Truma and Bikkurim are both usher to not Kohen to eat. Beheimah next to Kohen, and they are completely the property of the Kohen to whom they are given. The onen be'echad meya, and the Truma and Bikkurim that become mixed with permitted produce are bottled in 100 to 1, as we discussed previously. Onen and they require the Kohanim to wash their hands. You're washing their hands before eating Truma Bikurim. That's a chiyuv. Shemesh, and they also require sunset. As we discussed at the beginning of brachos, that when do the Kohanim go to eat their Truma? That's the first Mishnah in brachos, right? So they went to the mikveh during the day, and they had to wait until nightfall to eat their Truma and Bikurim. Interesting that the first Mishnah in brachos only mentions Truma, doesn't mention Bikurim, but be that as it may. Hare Ela B'Truma Bikurim Masha Enkin Maaser. So now the following, so all these laws we just mentioned, they apply to Truma and Bikurim, but they do not apply to Maaser Sheni. They're all not applicable to Maaser Sheni. Okay, so Yesh Mishnah Beis Yesh b'Maaser Bikurim Masha Enkin B'Truma. So now there are laws that apply to Maaser Sheni and Bikurim, but not to Truma. Maaser Bikurim to onen Havas Makom. Maaser Sheni and Bikurim must be brought to a particular place, meaning they have to bring them up to Shalim to eat them. If Maaser Sheni has to be brought to Shalim, and Bikurim has to be brought to Shalim, it's onen vidoy, and they require a vidoy decoration. You have vidoy maisus in the price is Bikurim, Bikurim. Decoration thanking Hashem. Surin, onen, and they are usher to an onen to eat. And okay, that's for that. Rabbi Shimon Matir, Rabbi Shimon ruled that an onen is allowed to eat Bikurim, according to him. Chiyuv and beer. And Maaser Sheni and Bikurim require beer. I mean, every fourth year and seventh year of the 7-year Shemitah cycle, Maaser Sheni Bikurim that have not yet been eaten must be destroyed. Rishon Potter, but Rishon disagrees with that too, and says one is Potter from having to destroy Bikurim. V'asurin kol shehen elech Yerushalayim. Any amount of Maaser Sheni or Bikurim that becomes mixed with permitted produce in Yerushalayim may not be eaten outside Yerushalayim. So you mix it together with chulin, you none of that can be eaten outside Yerushalayim, even the stuff that's mutter, because all that mixed up. Ugetilehen asurim malach Yerushalayim af lezarim lebeheimah. If seeds from the prohibited mixtures were planted in Yerushalayim, then the growth from those seeds would be usher to be eaten outside Yerushalayim, and they would even be usher to be eaten by non-Kohanim and animals. That's how far we go with that. Shimon rules that the growths of actual Maaser Sheni and Bikurim are mutter to be eaten outside Yerushalayim, and certainly to be eaten by non-Kohanim or animals. He disagrees with the Tanna Kama. The Tanna Kama continues, Hare Elu ben Maaser Bikurim. All these are laws that apply to Maaser Sheni and Bikurim. Maaser Ein came to Truma, but they do not apply to Truma. Truma does not have to be brought to any specific place. It does not require a decoration of any sort. It can be eaten by an onen. Does not require beer, and it's permitted to when mixed with permitted produce, and the growths of the mixture are certainly permitted. Right, Truma you can give to your Kohen neighbor in let's say Beit Shemesh or Tel Aviv. That doesn't have to be brought up to Yerushalayim. Mishnah Gimel. Yes, but Teruma and Maaser Sheni came to Bikurim. There are laws that apply to Teruma and Maaser Sheni, but not to Bikurim. Teruma and Maaser Sheni. Teruma and Maaser Sheni aser produce that has been processed. Once the produce has been completely processed, eating it is aser until Trumas and Maasers have been separated from it. Yesh lehem shiur, and they have a required amount, being that Truma is usually 1/50th of the crop, which is 2%, and Maaser Sheni is 1/10, 10%. They know again b'chalaperis, and they apply to all kinds of produce. Whether there's a base in English standing or whether there's no base in English. And they apply to the produce of sharecroppers, tenant farmers, a sikrikon, and a thief. We said yesterday that the sikrikon, what do you say? What's no 1, 2? That the sikrikon was a known murderer who would steal by threatening to kill the owner. The owner tells the sikrikon to take the land, doesn't really intend to give up ownership, rather because he expects to one day recover it in court. That's a sikrikon. So these apply to the produce of sharecroppers, tenant farmers, a sikrikon, and a thief, although they do not, even though these people do not own land on which the produce grew. These laws that apply to Teruma and Maaser Sheni, but not to Bikurim, even processed produce may be eaten before Bikurim have been separated from it. Bikurim may consist of any amount, no matter how small. Bikurim are separate only from the Shivas Aminim, and Bikurim are brought only when there is a base in Mikdash, and they are brought only by the person who owns the land on which they grow. Those are different from the other ones. Mishnah Daled, Bikurim Mashein came to Teruma and Maaser, and there are laws that apply to Bikurim, but not to Teruma and Maaser Sheni. Bikurim niknim mechubar lekarka. Bikurim can be designated while the produce is still attached to the ground. You can say that this is going to be Bikurim. And a person can designate the entire field as Bikurim without leaving any for himself. That's okay. The Chaya and he's responsible for them. meaning that if the Bikurim are lost or ruined before he brings them to the Beis Hamikdash, he must replace them with others. To onen korban, and they require a korban to be brought as well. One who brings Bikurim has to bring other korbanos. He has to bring a shlamim before leaving Yerushalayim. But it's not ma'akiv to the Bikurim if he doesn't bring it. But he's required to bring a shlamim. The shiur, and they require shiur. That the Levim sing while Bikurim are brought into the Beis Hamikdash. With tenufa, and they require wave. Wave in the same way that you wave your lulav in 6 directions, you would also wave the Bikurim in all directions. The lina, and they require staying overnight. That when someone brings Bikurim, he cannot leave Yerushalayim before the morning, but must spend that night in the city. These laws do not apply to Teruma and Maaser Sheni. Okay, Mishnah Hey. Those laws only apply to Bikurim and not to Teruma and Maaser Sheni. Mishnah Hey. Chumas Maaser Shavala Bikurim B'Shtei Drachim. Chumas Maaser is similar to Bikurim in 2 ways. Ula Truma B'Shtei Drachim, and similar to Truma in 2 ways. Niteles V'Natar Alatame. Chumas Maaser may be separated from Tahor produce on behalf of Tamei produce. V'Shalom and Hamukaf, and it may be separated from produce that is not near the produce for which is being separated. Bikurim. In these 2 ways, Chumas Maaser is like Bikurim, Oseres es Hagoren. However, the Chumas Maaser asters produce that has been processed, V'yesh shiur, and it has a specific amount, meaning that the Chumas Maaser is 1/10 Ketchuma. In these 2 ways, Chumas Maaser is like Truma. Okay, so as we said, the first half of the Mishnah of the Perek was comparing the laws of Teruma and Maaser Sheni and Bikurim. Now the second half is also contrasting one item with another, but none of these comparisons involve Bikurim. Okay. Esrog, so we're going to start. Mishnah Vav. Esrog, Shaval, Elam, B'Shloshet Drachim. Then Esrog is like the fruit of a tree in 3 ways. Yerek, Pedarech Echad. And it's like a vegetable in 1 way. Shaval, Elam, Ba'Orla is like the fruit of a tree with respect to the Isser of Orla, that you can't eat the tree's fruit for the first 3 years. Right? Similarly, it's also like the fruit of a tree regarding to revive, which means that the fruit of the tree during the 4th year of its life must be brought to Yerushalayim. Ubeshvius, and regarding Shemitah. Shemitah, the you have to keep Shemitah for the Esrogim. That's when it comes to Shemitah, you're not supposed to pay for the Esrog itself, but you can charge for the labor and the packaging and the shipping and all that stuff, and you belay the price of the Esrog into the price of the other 3 minim. I know when it comes to Shemitah, by me, we try not. We take most of our inventory from Morocco or from Italy, and there's some people who B'dafka want Eretz Yisrael Esrog during Shemitah, so we get some, and we make very little money on the actual Esrog itself. We just cover for the cost of labor and rent and shipping and all that stuff. We're not making profit on the actual Esrog. That gets a little complicated. Well, the yerek derech echad, however, it is like vegetables in 1 way. Shebishas likitaso isuro. Because with respect to the maaser, we go by when it's picked. Therefore, for example, if an esrog starts to grow in the 2nd year of the 7-year cycle, a Shemitah cycle, but it's picked in the 3rd year, So it's attributed to the third year when Maaser Ani must be separate, because Maaser Ani is years 3 and 6, and Maaser Sheni is years 1, 2, 4, and 5. Um, but because regarding Maaser, we go by the year which the Esther just picked, unlike which is like vegetables, but unlike the fruits where you go by when it started to grow, which would be the second year. These are the words of Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Lezer says, Shava the Elam b'chotaver, then Esther tree is similar to the fruit of a tree in every respect, even Chumas and Maisrus. Therefore, Esther that started to grow in the second year, but was picked in the third year, is attributed to the second year and must have Maaser Sheni separated from it, like the second year produce. Mishnah Zion. Dam Mahalchishtayim, the blood of those who walk on 2 feet, meaning people, Shaval Dam Beheimah, Hakshir Es Hazraim, is similar to animal blood in regards to making seeds and food that is fit to becoming tummy. Meaning that the rule is that food can't become tummy unless it first touches one of the 7 mashkim, which is blood. Dam, yad shachat dam. Yad is yayin and dam, which is wine and blood. Shachat is shemen, chalav and tal, and dam is devash and mayim, water, honey and water. Okay, those are the 7 liquids that can become tummy. Everything else cannot become tummy. The dam hasheres ain chayav and alav. Every human blood is similar to the blood of a sheretz, and that one is not chayiv kares for eating it. This respect, human blood is different from animal blood because one who eats animal blood is chayiv kares. Eat the blood of a sheretz is not chayiv kares. Koi or kvi, or however you want to say this, yesh bo drachim shavet lechaya. That a koi has ways in which it is like a chaya, as we're going to learn in the next Mishnah. The yesh drachim shav the Beheimah, and has ways in which it is like a Beheimah, as we're going to see in Mishnah Yud. Next to Mishnah is going to talk about the koi or the kfi. Yesh, because it's not a Beheimah, it's not a chaya. So what is it? Yesh drachim shav the Beheimah or the chaya. Then it has ways which is both like a Beheimah and the Chaya, as we're going to see in Mishnah Yud Aleph. And that's wisdom, which is not like a Beheimah or a Chaya. It's very interesting to see this Mishnah because there's like an intro to the next two Mishnahs, which you don't normally see something like that. Anyways, Mishnah test. Kate said Shavah the Chaya. How is a Koi or Kfi like a Chaya? Dama, To, and Kisa, Kedam, Chaya. If a koi is slaughtered, its blood must be covered with earth, just like the blood of a slaughtered chaya must be covered with earth. If you slaughter a chicken, right? The chicken is a chaya. You shot the chicken, you have to do kisur adam. But you shot a cow, you don't do kisur adam. They ain't shachtin osab yantif, or may not shecht a koi on yantif. And if one did shecht a koi on yantiv, one may not cover its blood. The chalba metame could betumas the vela Chaya. And the fat or of a dead koi transmit the tuma of nevela, just like the fat of a dead chaya transmits the tumas nevela. The tumasa besafik, but its tuma is based on doubt because a koi might be a behemoth whose fats are not tummy. One may not redeem a firstborn donkey with a koi because a firstborn donkey can be redeemed only with a sheep or a goat, and a koi might be a chaya rather than a sheep or a goat. The tumor which now is left, hang tight. Kate Mishnah Yud. Kate said, "Show the behemoth. How is a koi like a behemoth? Chalbo aser kechelib behemoth. Its fat is forbidden to be eaten like the fat of a behemoth. Ein chayven alav kares, one who eats the fat of the koi is not chayiv to be punished with karis for it. And a koi may not be bought with Maaser Sheni money in order to be eaten in Yerushalayim, just as the Beheimah may not be bought with Maaser Sheni money in order to be eaten in Yerushalayim. The chayiv is rubber, the chayayim the keva, and the koi is chayiv in the halachas of giving the foreleg, the cheeks, and the abu mesim, which is the fourth stomach of to a kohen, as is the case with a beheimah. Those are the matnas kahuna from a beheimah. Rabbi Lezer Poter, Rabbi Lezer says that one is not obligated to give these parts of a koi to a kohen, because when it comes to hilchas mamanis, dine mamanis, that you have that the person who wants to take the property from someone else has to bring the burden of proof. So therefore, if the kohen wants to take these parts of the owner of the animal, he has to. Then he must prove that the koi is a behemoth, which he cannot do. Therefore, according to Eliezer, he does not have to give these matnas kahuna. And finally, Mishnah Yed Aleph, Kate said, Eina Shava Lo L'Chaylo Beheimah. And how is a koi not like a Chaya or Beheimah? Asr Mishum Kilayim Im HaChayav Im HaBeheimah. It is asr due to the laws of Kilayim to mate a koi with a Chaya or Beheimah. You got to keep it in Bimino. HaKoseh Chayas Beheimah Behem Televino. If someone writes a document, giving his chaya and his behemoth to his son as a gift, and he owns the koi, so he writes a Yerusha, let's say, or he gives it as a matana. Lo kasha lo koi, he did not assign the koi to the son because we assume that he meant to include only animals that are definite chayas or definite behemoths, as opposed to a koi whose status is a suffix. Im amar amar. I mean, he knows there is a chaya. A Beheimah, if someone saw a koi and said, I am a Nazir, this is a Chaya, or if he says, I'm a Nazir, this is a Beheimah. Right? Who Nazir, he becomes a Nazir, he's suffix, because either statement might be true. V'shar kol drach shavim l'chad Beheimah, and in all other matters, the law of a koi are similar to those of Chayas and those of Beheimahs. That is, the laws are applicable to both Chayas and Beheimahs. The laws that apply to both, they apply to a koi as well. For example, a koi requires shchita before it can be eaten, because both a chaya and a behemoth require shchita, but it doesn't require kisur edam, because only a chaya requires kisur edam, but a behemoth does it. And it transmits tumah as an avelim, because both of them have that. And it transmits tumah as when you take a limb from a living animal, just like a chaya and a behemoth transmit tumah when they are dead, and your Chaya for Ibram and Chai with the Chaya Beheimah. That is the end of chapter of Perek Beis. Thank you for joining us. Tomorrow night we're going to have a special Motzi Shabbos shiur at 6:00 Eastern Time after Rabbeinu Tam. Have a wonderful Shabbos. Thank you for joining us, and stay warm and healthy. Kol Tov.